Call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Edward Eichman.
Kerry Shackleton.
Ed Wells.
Diane D'Amico.
And I guess we have a quorum, so we'll move ahead. We'll start with the moment of silence. If I can get one. And a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pardon my discretion there with my phone. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there anyone want to make any corrections to the agenda?
I have one question, which could be a correction.
Okay.
On the application for, let's see, 213 Madison Avenue, that's adding an addition to the rear of the house. Is that under our purview? I thought we didn't do things in the rear yard.
I think that's a question that's valid, but I think it's just something that'll come up in the process. I don't know how everybody thinks about that.
What is the plan? You guys
I would say that, so there is an alley in the rear of the property. It doesn't extend all the way through, but it's visible from the public right of way. My determination was.
The alley is considered a public right of way?
It is. It's an alley.
But still, that would be the side view, not the front, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it doesn't specify front or side in the ordinance. It just says visible from the public right of way.
That house isn't on a corner.
No.
So if you're driving down any street in town, and you can see from the side, the back portion of the house, and that's under our purview?
The ordinance says if it's visible from a public right of way, then it's a substantial alteration to a contributing property, then it does need to go to the historic district review for approval unless it's exempt, specifically exempt. So an addition is not specifically exempt from that toward the zoning administrator can approve it.
So that would be similar if it was a public parking lot that was behind it, anywhere where you had an ability to drive the vehicle on public property in the city.
Yeah.
There is a driveway on that lot on the west side of the house, so there is at least some partial visibility of the west side of the addition from the street. If you focus over the driveway to that side of the house.
But since it's not super visible, I mean, that should play into the factor of your approval.
I agree.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. Then I move we approve the agenda format as is, with the exception of 6D, which is 219 Mason Avenue. I think this item should be removed from consideration as we've already ruled on it in the past, and there's really no substantial new information presented by the applicant.
Do we have a second?
I think he should be able to complete his case and actually see if there is some difference than what we voted on in the past.
Is there, I'm asking a question here, so we have made the assumption that it is an approved application based upon your look through it, correct? So there shouldn't be any, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I'm asking Zach that you feel like it's different from the past.
yes, but also Larry, he's out of town actually. He's in Italy right now, but he headed up this one since there's a conflict of interest with him.
Oh, that's right.
But he did deem that as a change in his initial application, yes.
This application, not past ones, but this specific one for today.
Is different than his past ones.
Good.
Identified as a modification, so.
Any seconds? All right, motion passed. Do we have another motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, maybe.
Okay,
All right.
that's, I guess it's approved, yeah. I was trying to count in my head. We'll get my fingers out in a minute. Okay, all right. Any public comments?
Well, we also need to approve the minutes.
No, when we approved the consent agenda, that was everything.
Cover everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, oh, you're kidding. I had some questions on the reports. You can go ahead.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, here's my questions. On 647 Madison, where you approved the restoration of the porch railings, it shows different kinds of railings. I didn't know which one was approved.
It's the one, he had circled it, I believe it's the rounder one, or the one with the actual details in them, not the straight.
It's the turned one rather than the square, picket, or
Mhm.
square banister.
Yeah.
Okay.
And can you be certain that that is circled in the record?
Mhm.
Thanks. And,
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Are those are fine, all right,
Don't recall exactly, but,
They look like it might be a composite, but I'm not sure.
yeah, this was the first time we did it, so I'll provide more information when I do it.
Is that the handrail too? So
It
it's
is,
the
yeah.
handrail and?
The whole rail system.
Sorry.
it's okay. I just wanted to ask on 10 Peach Street, since this is all new to you too, what is the process? For example, that awning turned out not to be there very long. So, but what is the process for a person who has something on their building that they need to remove or change?
So they come to me and meet with me. I would ask them for more information. If they're like, hey, I want to change my railings, I'd be like, well, explain it. And then, so for instance, for 10 Peach, the applicant brought, I said, hey, these have been removed, provide documentation of why these are removed and that it's okay without historic approval so that I can make sure that that's appropriate. Without going to the board, and they provided that the awning material was bought in 2008, and they provided that invoice, and so I don't know if it was an invoice, but it was documentation that they were built in 2008, so clearly they were not historic.
Okay, that's it.
Any other questions or comments on the minutes or the reports? All right, public comment. All right, no unfinished business. All right, so we'll move ahead with the application for a certificate of appropriateness to construct a front porch addition on a detached single-family dwelling at 3 Madison Avenue. Is the applicant?
I'm here.
Okay, we can, if you want to give us a brief overview, Leon, I don't think in the limelight, that would give us a great deal of detail, and then we'll ask for questions or comments at that point. That's okay.
Sure. So I'm an architect, Leon Parham, and I'm presenting the front porch for the Buchanan family at 3 Madison. Basically, as you know, it's a 60s-ish one-story frame rancher. It's got vinyl siding, and in plan it's kind of a U shape, and U is Ford Madison. And there's an existing stoop in that U that's in 4 shape, but I do believe it's original. And the proposed porch is going to fill up that U and extend out about 6 feet, which will be in line with the other house on the block, which is one mast. And the porch will actually pretty much replicate the existing construction there. It's using the house as a model. The concrete block foundation is exposed. I'm proposing it be exposed on the porch. The existing stoop has exposed brick around the edge, and a broken tile surface. I mean, a broken tile on purpose, kind of a thing, I guess.
All right.
But it was tile. I don't know if you noticed, if you went there, but the right bay, the east bay, actually, I believe, was an enclosed porch, because it has a little brick edge that's under the siding. And so that's why I believe the vinyl was added when that porch was enclosed. So I guess that's enough.
I think so. Questions, comments, motion?
Only a couple of questions I have. The cornice on the front of the house currently has a gutter on it. I'm assuming the gutter will extend around the cornice of the porch as
Right.
well. But I didn't notice any specific reference. to
No,
that.
I think if there's a reference, it's, well, these aren't working drawings, of course.
I understand.
But I think the reference would be the profile of the soffit and gutter would be continuous.
That's what I assumed, I just wanted to clarify that detail. And the V groove
That's
ceiling,
changed since then, because we've discovered that the original soffit is 3/8 inch plywood. So we're going to expose that in the existing roof. That's part of the porch, and beyond that, where the new porch roof is extended beyond the existing, will be hardy board, smooth white plywood. So we're not removing any of the vinyl except where the new porch is. I mean, the new vinyl soffit.
So the vinyl soffit that's there now, you will continue around the new porch?
No, but we're going to take it all off.
You're gonna take it all off, okay, all right.
But leave
But
it.
that's a change to your application, is that, it's different? from-
Yeah, actually, we discovered what the soffit, the material below that is, and we're just going to go with the original material where it exists on the porch.
And that's the porch ceiling, that's hardy, and that's different from your application also, because that's where you were proposing to use the.
Yeah.
The handrails are gonna be wrought iron?
No, just, the handrails were on the stairs.
I believe in the report from Zach that he said this is a contributing structure.
So it's
It's old enough.
It's
Yeah.
mid-century.
It's 60s, yeah. So it's 50 years old there.
So if it's contributing, don't we have to say it is contributing as a ranch style home of the 60s as opposed to making changes to make it not look like that? Or it's a very nice looking ranch house.
Well, in my cover letter, I say that I've done these before, and the guidelines are very inspecific about that age house. But my approach to them is to go for what they are, which is what I've done in the past and what I'm proposing here.
The seam roof.
Yeah. Oh, the seam roof is correct for the slope.
I looked up a lot of 1960s ranch houses and looked at the type of porches they have, and really what is there is pretty much what they have. It's the roof that goes over the porch. It's not the gable, it goes over the porch. And it has the little thin columns.
Yeah, that's what I had, isn't it?
You have thin columns, but you have a new roof. I'm saying the existing roof just goes like this.
Like a shed roof?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and it's not really deep, it's deep enough to put a chair or two on, but
No,
it's not.
well, this
really
is a
deep.
new porch. It's a new covered porch.
But it's now a contributing home, that's why I'm trying to
And
get
people
this.
can't put a
Yeah,
porch on next to the home.
so I guess, I'm sorry, Leon, but what I was, I've struggled with the same issue that you're having here. So I thought to myself, I said, okay, so is that any different from somebody wanting to put an addition on the house or putting a porch on any other house in town? And I think the way I read the guidelines, at least what I've read, a porch or addition that is synthetic to the property is okay. Changing an existing building, altering the existing building, taking away something would, to me, would be a different story. Here we're allowing the addition, or we're proposing to allow the addition of a porch or the addition, just like any of the other buildings that we've added additions to.
Well, if you think it that way, then anybody can come with their 1820 home and put any old kind of porch on it.
Not any old kind, it would have to be a porch that would meet the design guidelines.
Let's see, and I'm saying, I don't think this does, because we have to treat this the same as we would treat a house from 1820. It's
Oh, I
contributing.
agree. I
It's
agree
historic.
that from that standpoint.
And I do think they can extend and make it a bigger porch, but keep the look of the home.
So what you're asking about, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah,
just so
go
I
ahead.
can understand, is that a number of ranch homes have a porch roof that begins at the apex of the roof and goes all the way down. You know what I mean?
And this does too, a small one.
Well, no, this one intersects the roof before it gets to the peak of the roof.
Right.
That's what you're saying, is that you feel like in a common when they go all the way up to the peak of the roof.
Yes.
But that would also sound like your porch roof is typically called a shed roof, just a single
Right.
roof sloped down.
And that's what this house has.
As opposed to a hip roof.
Right.
Shape.
Right.
Except that the hip roof form, of course, is consistent in district.
But to
Well,
me,
not to that home. And
Yeah.
that district doesn't have a lot of 1960s homes in it.
No,
So I think we
Well,
have
the house across the street, which I referred to, I did years
the
ago.
green one.
Yeah,
The one up on the corner on the
Okay.
edge. Mhm.
that's what they want. They want a look like that, and that's exactly what happened to that house.
And it turned out lovely. I'm not saying it didn't, and I'm sure this would turn out lovely too, but I'm just saying as the Historic District Review Board, being told this is a contributing structure,
This is the quandary that we get stuck in.
I know we do. We have no guidance.
I think
But I think we also need to recognize the basic style of this house, irregardless of its age, relative to the other varying styles that exist in the district. And, you know, my basic opinion is that what's proposed here, I don't really consider to be that foreign from a design or a vehicle standpoint for this type of low proportion, ranch home. So,
Are you in agreement that that standing seam roof is appropriate?
well, again, that roof exists in the district. There's precedent for it. A standing seam metal roof is an historic material.
But not historic to 1960.
Oh, I believe it's historic. Up until present.
To a 1960s ranch. Do we have
Of
any
course.
pictures of that? I haven't seen this. I really have studied this because this one is, I'm having a hard time with this one. In two ways. I want to say yes because I know that you've done fabulous work. But I also am nervous because I'm saying this is a house, if we don't keep this house to its form, then we're not the Historic District Review Board. And that's what we're here for.
But and I'm going to say this again, I think, so let's just throw this out. So what if somebody comes with as you said, a 1890s house with no porch on it, and they say we want to add a porch on it? I think the guidelines allow us to approve that.
Mhm.
The difference would be the materials, the methodology, the design
Right.
of the porch. So with that said, your principal objection is the roof material and roof line?
Yeah. Also, I don't want to see that broken terracotta tile vanish. I know it's busted up,
It's
but
going
that
to
is
vanish.
also a 1960s
It's,
stuff.
the porch is, have you seen a picture of the porch?
Yeah,
It's
oh,
falling
yeah,
down.
yeah,
But are you saying you'd want that replicated on the porch?
that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I mean, that porch is in bad shape.
Oh, I agree, I'm not saying it isn't, but this is a very 1960s thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why they can't replicate, or at least replicate it right there going to the front door and then doing whatever they want to do with the rest of it.
And you're proposing to do it's a dark sort of slate tile.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Weather and surface. Won't be slippery.
Other comments, questions? Yeah, sure.
So the way that I view this is, does it deter from the character of the district? What he's proposing, if they want to do a front porch, just in general, a front porch, what he's proposing, or what the applicant is proposing, is trying very hard to meet the guidelines that we're all interpreting in a way that allows them to put a front porch on this house. And the overall design that they've come up with, to me, as I was writing this report and reviewing this and going through that pre-application process, does not deter from the character of the district or the block or the sub-area. So that's how I would interpret it. And I understand, I understand what you're saying too as well. So I just wanted, that's kind of how I'm viewing it.
Yeah, I don't think in this situation though, I don't think we can look at the houses around it and say this house, as long as it looks like the houses around it, they can make the changes. Because this is a 1960s house in the middle of a neighborhood of old homes. This is Cape
The
Charles.
house across the street.
The one on the corner that's already done. Right, but it's already done. I mean,
That's
it is
not
past.
an
It doesn't look like this
It's
either.
a 50s house.
Well, all right, but we are taking houses individually. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? We look at it individually, we look at it in the greater picture, and then we make a decision. So if we're looking at this individually, this is a 1960s ranch style home. Then we look at it in the bigger picture. It's smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood of lots of homes that are either old or look old.
Very much like Cape Charles is all over.
Which is what Cape Charles is all over the
Right.
place. So I'm saying we should maintain the look of this home. And I still think it can be done by just keeping the roof at one split.
What was there a particular, I'll call it design criteria basis that you used for the hip roof form versus a shed roof?
Oh, yeah, I work with a lot of things. This is what the owners liked, and that's what I came with.
You think they would be opposed to a shed roof?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I'm just asking. I'm not sure I have.
But the shed roof is, are we talking about a shed roof or a roof going up to the bridge of the old roof? I mean, that sounds like what you want. That's not gonna happen. To rebuild the roof of the whole house.
I mean, it's feasible it could be a shallower pitch shed roof that didn't necessarily extend all the way up.
It could be.
It's
It's already-
ridge. It's pretty shallow.
It's pretty shallow.
Yeah.
It could be shallower, but
If it's not hip,
if it's not hit,
if
it's
it's
got
not
another
hip, and
roof
it's not the
next to it.
standing seam, but it matches the roof material.
Okay, then the project's out.
It's too shallow to do with any roof or anything else other than metal, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it gets shallower, the seam has to be higher than what I've specified, so it's already pretty shallow.
And you're a 1 inch or 1 1/4.
I call it 1.5 because of shallowness.
That's the pitch, 1.5?
No,
No,
the
the
seam,
height of the
What
stand.
is it, about a 3 pitch?
it's not a 3-pitch quite, 2.5.
2.5?
Yeah, so
I don't have as much problem with the porch pitch and the metal, because, you know, we have asphalt shingles on historic buildings, and we put asphalt shingles on other aspects of the buildings, which they're not historic in any form or fashion. Metal is in the guidelines as an approved material. It was certainly available, was it used on lots of 1960s houses? I'm not sure, I looked at, investigated that much, but that's my 2 cents worth on the roof.
What about the floor?
The floor, you can't see from the road, so you should be able to do what they want on the floor.
Well, in that case, why are we talking about all the porches that have to put their wood perpendicular to the house instead of parallel? Or do we have to go out and we have to say, I'm 4'11¾" tall, I can't see anything from the road?
No, you can see the
So is it
ceiling.
me or is it your height that we choose? I mean, we have to come up with a little more standards here. Because that's not right to say that.
Perpendicular is the correct way,
I know,
just for drainage, so
I
that's the
know.
way to build it.
I agree with you.
but this is not a wood porch floor, obviously, that we're talking about here, so it's more like an elevated terrace, if you will.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of details.
Yes.
I do see that you would see less of it. I mean, I'd like to see the porch, the floor stay as well, because it's part of that design feature. But I suspect the tenants don't be on that side of like that floor at all.
They would get a kick out of it, I'm sure.
Pardon me?
They would get a kick out of it, I'm sure, as they were walking away.
You know, it's a historic district. If people are gonna buy homes in the historic district, then they have to meet historic district guidelines.
I've been here for 20 years, so it's,
I know, but we are actually trying to build the guidelines.
Do we have a motion?
Well, I've got an amendment, we approve the application as submitted.
So we have a motion
I'm going to second it.
to approve the application.
Approve a certificate of appropriateness for the application for 3 Madison Avenue.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, we have discussion. I'm gonna have a discussion. Zach, what do we do about this change in the plywood soffit versus the vinyl soffit? Do we put that in as a conditional?
Yeah, because if you do it as submitted, then it would be what was submitted. So if you guys are okay with what he's proposing to change, then say with the condition that it's what he proposed.
So I amend the motion to include the
Proposed new changes.
approve the plywood
plywood, yeah. Original plywood
Plywood will remain,
and be exposed.
and hardy plank flat sheet hardy plank will be used on the
Yes.
floor.
On a new section of the roof of the porch.
Any seconds on that? Again?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion? All opposed?
All opposed?
All in favor?
Aye.
You new to this, are you?
Yeah. All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, an application for certificate of appropriateness to construct an addition to the rear of the detached single-family dwelling at 213 Madison Avenue. See the applicant, right?
Okay.
Would you please take notes? I'm sorry.
My name is Jody Outland. Good evening to members of the board, Tracy and Zach. I guess I could start off by maybe kind of expanding on what Diane was saying. Our project is to the rear of the house. It's a small addition, doesn't even take up the entire rear of the house, it's just the western end. The alley in the rear of our house ends with us, or the last house. We have had occupancy of the house since August 1, and since then, the only foot traffic I've ever seen is Davis Disposal. So if they have any issues with our cornices or our siding, and we'll have to talk to them. We have been working with Wayne Anderson across the bay. He's done the drawings that you all have had submitted with our application. This is our second historic home in the district. We are living here in one of the old houses I used to serve on with a similar board that you all sit on in Richmond. And it's always been a dream to have a historic home. So it's in our heart to have a house that fits in and has a historic appeal.
Can I also add something? If you guys feel that this is not in your purview, you can make a motion to do that. That's very much an available option to us.
Are there any alleyways to the sides of this house?
At the back.
Just in the rear?
And also,
Oh, there it is.
the west of our house is, it's a lot. Looks like a driveway, but it's actually not a driveway.
That belongs to the next generation.
Yeah, it used to belong to this house, and before we bought it, they had sold a lot.
I mean, that's.
My understanding is that they're gonna do something with it. Probably sitting in front of you at some point.
Questions, comments?
I mean, I'll make a motion that it's not within our purview.
I will second that. I don't have any issues with this.
Can you flesh that out, please?
I will make a motion that 213 Madison Avenue addition on the rear of the single-family home is not within the purview of the Historic District Review Board because it is in the backyard and cannot be seen from the street.
Is that sufficient? And the process is for them?
Yeah. And then it'll be refunded here.
I'm sorry, what?
It'll be refunded here.
Oh, that's good news.
If it's
Unless you want us to use it for our Christmas party.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion is to, is there a word here? Is that we're not denying, we're not approving, we're,
It's not in our purview.
No, they've made the motion, so she's done.
okay. All right, all approved?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll have a nice evening.
Would you like these materials?
Yes, please.
Okay, application for certificate of appropriateness to reconstruct the front porch and repair a pier foundation on the detached single-family dwelling at 547 Mason Avenue.
I have a correction with staff report. The zoning, current zoning page is CR, not R1. CR district.
Does that affect anything?
From an historic standpoint, no.
Okay. Change your thought process.
I went into it thinking that it was CR, knowing it was CR, but just didn't change it on the report.
So it is, you just didn't write it down right, it is
Yes.
CR.
Yes.
Could you say your name?
Arnold Few, 547 Mason Avenue.
Want to just give us an overview? Doesn't have to be a lot of detail, everybody's read and looked, but just give us a brief.
What it is I'm rebuilding the front porch and putting a new sill on the existing building. I brought some samples of the decking that I'll be using for the deck, which is perpendicular to the house, and it's mahogany. This is a piece of this.
He's Mr.
Mr.
All right.
Thank you. And in the application I put on that I'd like to use cedar siding underneath the porch, which was up for, I guess, discussion or whatever. That's what I would prefer to use. I have samples. It's northern white, 2 coats of paint, primer and 2 coats of paint.
Is this the stuff they normally put up and they stain it?
That is northern white cedar that's been primed with 2 coats of paint. And I would get, it's a number 1 grade material,
What's the exposure you're going to use?
probably 7 inches. And then also too, that there was a soffit that was underneath the porch that had vinyl soffit material on it. Even though it couldn't be seen, it would be replaced with 1x6 pine beadboard.
When you say soffit, you mean the ceiling in the board?
Yeah, just see the porch.
But what's their name?
Vinyl soffit material.
There's nothing under the line.
No.
No, I see.
Part of it's missing, so.
That the extended board?
This is, oh, I'm sorry.
No, the permit that was applied for was to replace the sill on the house. And the reason I was brought here this time was because I removed some of the siding to get to the sill. And everything will go back, once the sill is replaced, everything will go back the way it was.
So you're gonna put the siding back and then the line?
Correct.
Okay. Is that in your application, that you're putting
Yes.
the original siding back and
Yes,
this
sir.
line back over top of that?
Yes, sir.
Did
There's
this
a
originally get
window.
approved for 2 doors? Okay. Are you planning on having it split, living quarters upstairs?
No. It's been changed. When I first came in front of the board, which has been, it's really not, it doesn't need to be discussed at this, but it was going to be commercial on the first floor, residential on the second floor. Now it's going to be residential on both floors.
Oh.
So you're not putting 2 doors on?
No, I am putting 2 doors because that's what was approved. In the meantime, it went from being commercial on the first floor and residential on the second floor to being one residence.
So is it gonna be a duplex?
No, single family.
One.
Do you feel compelled to put two doors there, is that, or you just?
That's what I applied for, and I didn't want to back up.
Is
I
that-
just felt that it was
Does he
best.
have to do something that he applied for? Or would he have to come back to us again?
I mean, he could, so in a year's time, a COA expires, so if he got approved for that, it would just expire, so he wouldn't have to put in the order.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have to put that door in if you don't want to. I'd prefer like,
To have
I'll
it go
prefer
back
not
to-
to if we could avoid it, but you have a discussion about a window.
Yeah, the window was settled to go back, oh, okay, well, that was to remove a window that was existing in the back of the house and replace, there's a vinyl window in the front that's broken. Instead of replacing it with a vinyl window, I thought it would be best to replace it with the original window at the back of the house and put it on the front.
If you don't do the door, do you have a second window that you can use?
If I don't,
If you don't do the door, and decide.
I would still use that same window, because that's what I applied.
Do you have two of them? I'm asking. Would you
No,
change
no,
the
no.
door to a window?
No, I would just put siding.
Okay.
You
Because
couldn't
it's
do
sort of
it. You either have to have the door or the window.
You have to have a door or a window.
Well, because you could not do, like Zach said, you'd be able to not do what you asked to do, but you couldn't change that and do away with the window. That would.
No, what I'm saying is I would put the window, but if I don't do the door, I wouldn't replace where the second door was with the window. Does that make
I
sense?
think that's what Diane was asking, if you didn't put the additional door in or you put a window in, he's saying no.
You tell me what would be best historically.
Well, if you're not gonna put the door in, I think you need two windows on the front.
Yeah.
If you're approved to put the door in, so you can put the door in.
Yeah, okay, but it would be better if I replaced it with a window.
So how this would work is, if you don't want to put in the door, it has to remain the way it is now, which
With
is
two
the
windows.
window.
Oh, no, there's no, what I'm doing is putting,
I understand what you're doing, but what currently exists today, if we walked over to the property,
oh,
has
okay.
to remain unless you change that window out.
Okay, so in other words, I can't put the door on the right side where the window was. I'd have to put it where the existing door is.
Oh, yeah,
Is that
you
correct?
can't
I see.
switch out the window, yeah.
Okay,
I see what you're asking. He was gonna switch out the doors, essentially. The location of the door now, you're just gonna close that one up and then move the other door. You know, does that make sense?
It does.
I thought he was
I
taking out the
understand it would
window.
make more sense to have the door where it is now, because that's where the stairs are.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to go in over here, or you could, it wouldn't really matter, it's up to you guys.
All right, we're gonna have door on the left and two windows. Is that what we're saying?
Or door on the left, window,
Door.
and door. That's his choice.
Okay.
That's your
That's my
choice.
choice.
He only has one window, one window.
Because, and the reason is,
But I don't think you should move that window anyway, because number one, they're two different sizes. So it's gonna change the size.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
the
not-
only remaining original window in that house.
it's the door.
Yeah, only remaining.
yeah,
So you're gonna take it out in its original location.
But maybe, I don't know, maybe when they talked about them putting the original window in there, they were not gonna have this much trim around it, because that's much higher than the door. It looks,
The
I could
original
make them all
window
the same
frame
height,
exists.
see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the original window frame exists. Somebody put replacement vinyl sash in the opening. So you'd have to take out the original window frame, do away with it, move the other frame and window around to the front, which is smaller than nowadays.
so if you let him use these windows, then what does he do with this trim that's on there now?
Well, I'm assuming it's gonna come off because the guidelines are pretty clear about if you take the vinyl off, you can't, and there's original siding under it, you can't take that siding off. And there is original siding under there.
But if he's leaving the windows there, he's not taking it off.
That's his choice.
I'm sorry, I'm not really
So-
sure I understand what you're saying.
I'll deal with that part administratively, in the sense of if he is proposing proposing, after this conversation, after this, on this application right now, if he wanted to do something different with the doors and the windows, I'll discuss that with him and going back to the board, but I'll make it clear with you as to what is
Yeah, and it doesn't matter, because I can start, I'll be starting from scratch, basically, because I'm moving the doors, I'm gonna disrupt the whole front of that. And I guess what you're saying, like what you just said, is if they're the original siding, then I have to use it. I can't put cedar shakes, even though it might look better, newer.
But there's no precedent, there's no historic precedent for there to be cedar shake on the front under a porch there. So if you take that vinyl siding off and the original siding exists under there, even if it's only 3 boards, then that's what you have to put back. Or you can leave the vinyl siding
I
on.
think there's clapboards underneath.
Yeah,
There it is.
There is, yeah.
Or you can leave the vinyl where it is. That's your choice.
Okay. Then I'll go back to clapboard and not use it.
And again, I would say that, in my opinion, the window has to stay where it is too, because you can't, if you move that window, you have to tear out the original frame, and you're putting, you're taking out the original window from the back.
Okay, so it would be best to, even though that window is broken, replace it with a vinyl replacement window in the old clapboard and reframe around it, because that,
You should only put in a replacement window sash, not replacing the frame,
okay,
just like what's already been done. So they're vinyl replacement windows, so the original framework is still there. We sure want to see that disposed of. So you could get new sash and go back in that place because that's considered a repair.
okay, new vinyl sash.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
And you don't know.
I mean, we
that-
prefer wood, but that's not really something we can, that's considered a repair in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, can I repair it with a wooden window
You,
at the same size?
you can certainly put a wooden window in there.
Okay,
In the original opening.
okay, the opening that's here, that same size.
Yeah, I don't know if we'd have to come back.
No,
Okay.
that'd be like,
Yeah, I think that's kind of overkill.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I mean,
we
I'll
want-
make it look,
We'd want the frame to stay, all the trim to stay, so
Okay.
you'd just be adding the sash
okay,
back in the original opening.
okay.
Well, this is gonna be a motion, 3 feet long.
And
I'm
the-
not making it.
And the piers are gonna be brick veneer, if you weren't.
I'd like to, and I don't know, you guys are up for, I originally proposed that it was parched block. Because it's all over the place, it's on, but you tell me what is historical
so
to that.
I would just recommend looking at the staff report and his letter of intent, and what he's proposing today is what you guys are, it's not really brought to the pre-application meeting. He made adjustments at that pre-application meeting per recommendations. And now this is what, so if it says brick veneer, which I believe it says brick veneer.
And that's what we're going with, is that?
Yeah.
That's what it says in here.
Okay, I don't want to back up and,
All right.
that's fine. I mean, I just want to do what's best for the town and for us.
So we have the window we've discussed, we have the foundation we just discussed. Then we have the siding on that's behind the vinyl, we discussed that. Anybody have anything else to add? So they want that. Okay, then we have the porch ceiling,
And the porch deck.
porch deck we've seen, talked about, columns.
Columns are being replacing one that's rotten to match the other 3.
So the others that are standing there is what you're gonna match.
Correct.
Okay.
And they have some rot, I'll fill it with epoxy.
Okay. And that's it.
So these dotted, this is what he is saying he wants to do, and then we are making the changes.
Well, no, what you're looking at there is the pre-application meeting. What you have to go to
Where
is
is
the report that Zach did,
This is what he
that
says.
detailed his exact
this is what he's.
application.
Okay.
Because there are some differences in the pre-application meeting rights act and things that were discussed that are not in the actual application. So is there anything that we did not discuss that's on the application?
I think we covered that.
Like that.
Motion.
Uh, This is a long one, I don't know if I can word it correctly, but I'd like to make a motion for 547 Mason Avenue, that the proposed applicant is approved to replace the front porch column to match the existing 3 columns, to replace the porch decking of 5/4 by 3 natural wood, replace the siding under the porch roof with beadboard, wood beadboard, soffit material.
You mean
Place-
seal.
Ceiling, not soffit, ceiling. Replace the siding, put the clapboards back up and then cover with the vinyl on the siding of the house. Replace the piers with brick veneer. And replace the windows with new wood windows.
That one window on the porch.
Replace the one window, original window, wood window with,
The existing.
No, the existing, no, wait, no, we're getting close. It's the existing window on the front of the house, under the porch.
okay, replace the existing window with a wood new window.
Correct, exactly the same size.
To fit in the existing opening, not change the frame size. And keep the trim, the original trim. I think that's it.
Did you do the replacement piers? We approved them here?
I think
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only have one question with what you said. Did you say remove the vinyl and then put new vinyl over the existing clapboards? Is that what you said?
No, he said, remove the vinyl and expose the original siding, which that's really his option,
On the
to
front
leave the
porch.
vinyl. He would still be able to leave
Okay,
the
so
vinyl.
Now, can I do either or, do I have to put like on the front porch? Only.
You can leave the original vinyl, or you can take it off and restore the original siding.
Okay.
That you would be able to leave it without any permission from anybody.
he also has that on the perimeter of the house.
No, I'm sorry, what?
You also have the vinyl removed on the perimeter of the
No, I
house.
don't want it, yes, I do now,
Right,
but I'm putting that back.
right, you'll have to replace
And
the
then what I'll
clapboards
do
and
is
then the
come, if
vinyl.
I need to replace that vinyl siding, I need to put the vinyl siding back. What this whole thing started with was replacing the sill. So I want to put it back the way, the vinyl siding the way it is now.
So you're putting the clapboards on and then putting the siding over it?
Correct.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one final question. Can I start this work tomorrow?
You can. You can apply for your permits if you need any from Jed.
Yeah, I already have all the permits I need.
All right, yeah.
Would you, I wouldn't think you could get a permit until you had this, the historic district. approved.
Well, he already had permits and it was a stop work order, so the stuff that he's doing here won't require, maybe siding, I would just double check with Jed if you have any permits that you need pull, that you
Okay,
have.
for what that I have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for your,
Appreciate
your
it.
working with us to
Yep.
preserve. I think this is while in fairly bad condition, it's a great example of the types of houses that we have in town that we're really trying to preserve.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to do, and that's why I took it on.
Thank
It's a
you.
big project, and I think I'm up for it. But we'll find out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay. Application for modification for certificate of appropriateness. to modify the storefront entrances on a mixed-use building at 209 Basin Avenue. Just state your name for us, please.
Okay, my name is Barrett Cree. I'm here on behalf of Dowling Construction and Danny Mayer, who is heading this project. I also have, I have a display, a few photos I'd like to, it's okay,
Sure.
pass around. And I did not have it either, so if you'll let me make sure.
Thank you.
So we'll do an old-fashioned evening.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, my name's Barrett Cree, and I'm here on behalf of Dowling Construction, and it's my hope that I can articulate as well as Danny does this project and our proposal. Larry DeRay is not here, who has, just due to conflict of interest, has basically stepped in for Zach throughout these previous meetings. So if I could, just for informational purposes, get on the record, what was the recommendation on this proposal from the town planning and staff?
I did not do a recommendation, and I'm not gonna do a recommendation, but the town staff, as in the town manager, recommended in the staff report that the board discuss and determine the overall compliance before a certificate of appropriateness for exterior modifications to an existing commercial building is approved. So there's not really a recommendation of approval or denial, it's more basically what the board thinks.
Okay, and everybody does have before them the proposed changes and are intimate with these and what we're,
Excuse me, has everybody been able to look at
Yes.
Okay. So I think we're all very familiar with this, we've looked at it several times.
I'd just like to say, in what capacity are you representing the owner?
I am representing him because he cannot be here. So I am, one, the realtor of this project, but more than anything, due to his inability to be here for this meeting, it was agreed that he could have somebody actually represent him on his behalf. So
I just
merely,
don't know if that's in the guidelines. I mean, I thought it had to be the contractor, the owner, or something of that nature.
It doesn't specify, it just says the applicant, and the reason that the applicant wasn't available is because of the non-quorum, so, as of last week. So,
due to the rescheduling, he just could not fit this in.
Is Bear able to make decisions for him? Is that required?
I mean, how is it?
I have spoken with Danny. I understand his interests, and I can speak to questions that you may have. And if there's something I'm not certain of, certainly I will be able to state that.
So, yeah, I asked Danny specifically in an email if he's allowed Barrett to make determinations, and he had said exactly what Barrett said, but if it's something that Barrett doesn't feel comfortable with, then that's something that if
That's
it
what I'm
needs
trying to
more-
get at.
If it needs more discussion, that's a deferral. If it's something that he might not feel comfortable with, but says, yes, we'll do that, then that's stated on record that he'll do that. And that's part of the application, so that's just, that's probably just good.
If you're good with it, I'm just trying to cover all the bases.
Yes.
I'm not trying to.
Well, and he certainly wanted to be here, it's just conflict. As you know, he lives in Richmond, comes down here on weekends, but just due to the rescheduling of the last meeting, it's just, you know, I am quite familiar with this project from the onslaught, and this was even prior to the purchase, and prior to the design of this, so I hope I can meet his expectations and look forward to
I'm
your
just trying to look
questions.
at it as a legal angle. If you have, if we recommend something and you agree to it, and then the owner comes back and says, no, you know, where does that put us in the whole scheme of things?
Yeah, I mean, I have it in the email, that's why I specifically asked.
Okay, as long as that's square, okay.
Okay. So, we're really here to review and discuss modifying the entrances. And at the time that this building was, Danny was considering making the purchase, and at the time of the purchase, we met with the town to discuss the intent of commercial first floor and residential on the second floor. And at that time in that discussion, it was asked that we provide and recommended that we provide ADA units on the first floor for aging in place. We just don't have anything in town. And we thought that was a great thing for us to step up to the plate and fill that niche. By doing so, however, we really reduced our retail space. It's a compromise that, at the recommendation of the town, seeing the need, it just was something that was an easy no-brainer that we could comply with. The change that we're asking for, we think is a minimal change, but for very good reasons. And the plans that were submitted showing these changes really show that it's, particularly when you look at the elevation, is not going to change the historic character and value of this building. I heard once before mentioned by this board that previous rulings would not be considered, and that this board is not held by previous rulings, and I respect that and understand that. But I can tell you that this is one individual who, from the onslaught, wanted to make sure that nothing changed the historic value of the building. I, for one, thought that balconies for resale purpose would be much more desirable. And Danny felt that that would inherently change the historic look of the building. And the one thing that I would ask the board, even though you are not held by previous rulings, I would just love for y'all to consider the difference of what has been implemented on this historic building, and how what's been proposed has been in more keeping than I think any other project except for maybe Northampton Hotel. So what we're looking for is really to make this retail space successful in the long run, viable, that we can keep this rented for years to come. And, you know, if you take 2 feet off 100 feet, that's, what is that, 2%? If you take 2 feet off 50 feet, you're 4%. So while this minimal change might seem minimal from the perspective of the Historic Review Board and what we might achieve, it's really big in the way of retail space and functionality. And it's what our hope is that this board would take into consideration the mixed bag of materials at these entrances. Your west entrance, the ceiling is of different material. Your middle entrance and your east entrance do have the same ceiling material. However, your entrance into the main entrance that will be our Mason Avenue entrance is even of another different material. So what we have is a mixed bag, size and shape, nothing consistent. And what we are doing is not changing materials. It's simply moving forward to make that inner space that is otherwise not practical. That being said, we have really, I believe, brought something to Cape Charles that will sell itself and will complement this town. And I believe that we are really doing our best to bring the best product to Cape Charles. But when you look at the existing materials out front, to force us to stay with those materials is not allowing us to offer the best product for safety, for practicality, for rentability. If you have a single pane glass, I have a commercial building, single pane, it's sweated constantly. It's just absolutely not in keeping. And this is not a historic renovation, but it's adapt and reuse. And we're really hoping that you'll consider this request to enable us to bring these entrances into a consistent fashion, that if you were to look at it from front, I think everybody has the elevation shown in the front. If I stood here with the elevation, I do not believe you could pick it out. And so what we're looking for is something that will be as functioning as the project that he stepped up to. And I look forward to answering any questions.
Questions, discussion, comments?
At the pre-application meeting, I suggested an alternate modification idea, and I would like to review that at this point. So I'm going to also distribute a little bit of information here. Before we take one. Before we leave. All right, this first page, of course, these three photographs are just for general reference. What I want to focus on is the page behind the photos, which is the basis for my alternate modification idea. And essentially, as you look at the two diagrams, the letters in the circles are cross-referenced to the legend. So the diagram on the left side is the existing west entrance. The letter B shows the existing center and east entrances, and letter C, the proposed entrance modification, and letter D, my alternate entrance idea. The basis for the alternate is maintaining the corner display windows that exist immediately on each side of the entrance doors. As you look at the right-hand diagram toward the top, the number 1 represents the existing corner display windows. And the alternate idea is to preserve that part of the historical fabric differently than the proposed modification. And as you 7 and 8 suggest maintaining the existing decorative tile border pattern that extends under the corner display windows and in front of the entrance door, the number 5 on the right-hand diagram, and also maintaining the paneled ceiling pattern that you can see when you look at the photographs that are included. What this suggests is a combination of modifying the location of the center and east entrances based on the adaptive reuse characteristics of the project, but maintaining more of the existing historic fabric and details. And one reference that I've included on this page from the Secretary of the Interior standards for storefronts in their not recommended portion, they say removing or substantially changing storefronts and their features, which are important in defining the overall historic character of the building, so that as a result, the character is diminished. The substantially changing aspect of that part of the standards that is not recommended is really what is part of my suggested alternate modification.
Okay. Barry, to do it your way, how many extra square feet would you get?
At the bottom of my notes, you'll see they would
Oh.
get about 35 square feet with their alternate.
Uh-huh.
With their proposal, the alternate would be about 25 square
And are you saying per bay, or are you saying for the entire building?
feet. Per store. or
Per store,
retail
yeah,
space.
that's what I meant.
Yes.
Was the swing on the doors going to be changed?
We're proposing to maintain the same materials. We're not proposing changing the materials. So the swing as is, you can see that it is showing the opening as they currently open now. So we're not proposing changing that. In essence, the bump outs there that you just mentioned, that maintaining that really does not then give us the square footage to make that overall investment and change. And it does nothing to make that consistent from one entry to another. And it just does not achieve what we're looking for and trying to make that space a usable space.
My next question is this. This application as it is this different from any of the last ones that we saw? Have they made a change from the last one we entertained and denied?
I went back and looked,
Uh-huh.
and what I saw the last time related to the entrances was the desire to change all 3 entrances to look alike. It was not, I couldn't find anything that said that they wanted to change 2 of the entrances and leave 1 alone.
Well, if they wanted to
But
be
essentially-
alike, then it would be changing 2 and not changing the other.
Well, no, they wanted to change them all so they were straight.
What we're
They
proposing,
would alter all 3 of them in a fashion so that they would be the same. The one on the left-hand side has a splayed entrance.
Right.
They want to change that to straight, and then reduce them just like they do it now on the other 2 sides. So it's a technicality, and I don't know what the thing is there, but it is not the same. So
may I just clarify, because I just want to make certain that what we're proposing at this time, and I'm not sure if what was proposed was to change 3, I can assure you that that wasn't the intent. The intent the whole time has just been to change the east in the middle, to bring it in line with the west one. So we don't want to change the west one at all. And if that came through of changing all three, I assure you that was not the intent.
Yeah, I don't think it was to change three, I think it was to change one to change two.
Well, I might be
On this
wrong. I remember a conversation about them being being the same. I mean, to me, that's exactly what we don't want to see. We don't want them to be the same because they are different, they're eclectic, that's the way the building was built, and that's part of the character, the principal character of the building. And in my opinion, that's what we have been fighting for multiple meetings to maintain the character of the storefronts of the building.
You know, I'm looking at the plan, and it's showing the door swings are a lot different, they're not the same as proposed.
I will have to go on record and suggest that this drawing was a sketch and probably never took into consideration the swinging of the door. Our purpose here is simply to make the non-functional retail space functional so we have a viable rental.
Well, what is it gonna be? Is the door gonna swing out, or is it gonna swing in?
It will maintain as it is. Whatever its current swing position, we're not proposing to change that. We're literally just talking about lessening the depth of it.
So
Ed's proposal of going to smaller is not acceptable to you.
It just, for the effort and for what it delivers, would not rationale the change in cost.
What's the square footage of the ADA apartments?
One is just over 750 and the other one is 688.
There's no requirement in the city's code that requires them to do this,
No.
correct?
That requires them to do the
To have-
ADA. So I think it's part of their conditional use permit, it was a condition. Yeah.
Which has been
You think,
completely
but you
framed
don't know.
out in the design.
We need to find out, I guess.
But even if it was, if that was a negotiated thing about conditional use, it doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing.
No. But their clinic does because
Oh,
it's reducing the square footage of each store. To my mind, that's not a problem for us. That's not something we address.
I agree.
Yeah.
So in your description, you said there are 3 reasons why you want to do this. I didn't hear them.
Well, there are many more, but primarily, if we went back to the materials, this is absolutely, defunct material.
But you said you were going to use the same material.
That's because that's what you're requesting. We're
Okay.
really hoping y'all
But
will.
that doesn't have anything to do with changing the size, right?
I'm sorry?
That doesn't have anything to do with changing the size because you're using the same material.
We're using the same material as this board has requested,
So
which is not safe, not up to code, and really not practical.
But that doesn't have anything to do with so what are the other reasons why you want to change it?
The big thing is functionality and making sure we have a viable retail space. We have dead space that is not usable for retail.
Didn't they plan on this 2 or 3 years ago? Didn't they figure out the square footage of the architect?
We just submitted this past winter. The design was completed this past winter. We went to the town and asked, this is what we have, what do you recommend? And that's how we began the entire process, was going to the town.
I just don't understand how you didn't propose this in the beginning, if you wanted to maximize the square footage for your retail space.
Well,
It just seems after the fact to me.
Well, I'd like to think that that this board is fluid and understands you can't, you might not see all the hurdles that might become hurdles, and to be able to address everything right up front, that would be great, but this is where we're at now. We're asking for this board to consider what we have, what we've done, and where we'd like to go.
I commend you for getting the ADA apartments and condominiums, but, this comes down to money, is really what it comes down to. This
How
comes down
so?
to- How so? You're asking for more retail space to make the rent higher.
No,
You're
it's,
gonna get more money per
No,
square
no.
foot. Yes, you are.
I would like to clarify, because this was a point that Danny specified. It's not about trying to get higher money, it's about assuring that what we have is as much of a viable retail space
What does
as
viable
phase 1 and 2.
Have you rented the space already?
He's already spoken with someone who wants to rent it. But if they've not signed the lease, if they don't move forward, or when their lease expires, what we're looking for is to make this.
They feel like, because I was in there, and the tenants were in there, they're already measuring and planning. Their plan is to move.
I
And
understand.
they didn't, their comment was that, well, we're hoping to get this changed, but we don't know. But anyway, we're planning to do it anyway.
I would think that this tenant has nothing vested in this project, and that this tenant can walk away when the lease is done, but this owner cannot.
Well, any other discussion, comment? Do we have any motions?
Ed, I think this one's on you.
All right.
What is the recommendation from Larry to Ring?
There's,
He didn't make a recommendation?
No,
it's up to
he
us.
didn't. It's up to us.
I can make a,
Well, let
I can
let's do this for a moment. I'd like to hear a little more from you all related to this alternate modification idea as to whether.
But I don't think I think you've got some ideas there, but, he hasn't proposed it, so we couldn't put it in as a conditional, because he hasn't proposed it. That's a completely different change. Technically, we can't tell him he's got.
You can't make a commitment on yes or no of these modifications?
As it's been pointed out, if that nub extends the way you have there, there's just no point in that modification. You're not changing the dynamics of the inside. You may be preserving that exterior, but it's done nothing to help that inside unit and its functionality.
because of the design or because of the amount of square feet?
Because of the existing building and how it's laid out.
You're still getting 25 more square feet.
Well-
Except your plan says 35 square feet. The alternate says 25 square feet. You're only losing 10 square feet.
My understanding is that for the expense and what it will do, that maintaining that nub, just at the end of the day, what you're doing is maintaining an unfunctional space.
But if you read the historic guidelines,
Which are
it
guided.
falls into what Ed is proposing.
We have been in more keeping than any other project that I think you can point to.
I think you have done some things, but to me, these storefronts are one of the pinnacle items in this building.
Again, we're accepting that we not change the material and we keep that in kind.
Do we have a motion?
Do you want me to make another motion? Because honestly, I think you all agree with me that there is no modification to this, considering the one that we have already denied. If we deny this again, then they can go to the town council. If we are really, really interested
that's
in
what's gonna
keeping
happen.
this
This is gonna
storefront
be
the
put
way
to-
it is,
This is going to be brought to an appeal, and we're going to get overridden.
Well, I'll say my piece on that, and as everybody else can too. My concern would be if we deny it for some technicality that we're not 100% certain on, it might even be more simple to overcome. I think we stick to our guns and we do what the guidelines say, and if the town chooses to make that decision, then that's their choice.
so what you're really saying though, is that anybody who we deny can come back with the same thing, and we can deny them again.
Well,
So my point is,
If
we
they
are
want to pay
here
the
to
fee.
say, we are here to make a decision. Once we make the decision, it's made. If they come back later with a real modification that we can accept, we approve it. If we can't accept it, once again, we deny it. But what is happening really is we're being played. And to me, this building is too
I think
important.
that's a bit out of context,
Well,
man, for
I
you to say
don't-
that about
Barrett,
this applicant. Now, other, I think- I take
please don't
offense.
take offense, because that, I don't
to
think.
say
that's
we're
related.
being played, we've done everything you've asked. We've
I don't
submitted
think
plans.
that's related necessarily to, there's a bigger discussion, but I'm concerned that my only concern here is that we do something on a technicality, and then that technicality can't be supported.
give me an example.
If we say that it's not new and that we've already ruled on this, I don't think you can support that, because I think if you go back and look, the other applications are different. They may be different in an extremely minor way, but I don't think it would stand up. Our decision may not stand up either, but so Zach, you were about to say.
Yeah, section 8.19 says, the Historic District Review Board may permit modifications of original proposals if such modifications are formally acknowledged, clearly described, and reported in the records of the case. Certificate, that's basically what it says.
And this is not a modification.
That's what Diane's saying, it's something that was already voted on.
And if we say it's not a modification, and then they go and they have made it 1 foot difference, is that really a huge difference? The whole point of our not voting on this was we want to preserve the storefront. That's what we want to do. And we have to do it however we can.
I agree with your principle, Diane. I just don't, my concern again is that we have no footing if we overturn, if we say that it's not, that we've already voted on it and so we're not going to vote on it, then there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for the appeal process is cleaner to me. If they want to appeal, go to town council, and town council disagrees with our.
I think that scenario has already been set up.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying the two options for his appeal in this would be one on the decision of the Historic District Review Board based on the guidelines. The other option is a decision based upon a technicality that I don't really think we are in a position to make a decision about. And I think that's a real dangerous position. I think either one of them have an opportunity to be overturned. It's just which one do you want to be overturned by?
Mr. Ed? Do you have an opinion?
If we focus on the storefronts portion of the Cape Charles guidelines on page 47, it says retain all elements, materials, and features that are original to the building.
I think we're all clear on that
This
aspect.
is what we
Yeah.
approved previously. So what options do we have? We either approve this modification or we deny it.
But you are still saying it's a modification, and I'm saying it is not a
Well, but it has
modification.
been submitted as a modification. I'm just talking,
It can be,
I'm just using the terminology from the applicant's submission.
And I think once the application arrives here, we have accepted it as a valid application. I think that's something that we agreed to before.
which is why I said in the beginning that I did not want it to remain on our agenda, because I do not think it's a modification. I want to preserve the front of this. I think our store windows are the most important thing we have going downtown. And if we let them modify, there's going to be very little store window there. And it's not historic.
Well, I think we need a motion. And we're just going to have to carry the motion on on the voting members.
I just hate to vote on this and then we have to go sit and be chastised in front of the town council.
We can't alter that though, Ed. I mean, it's gonna be, it is or it isn't.
So here's your decision. You agree that it's a modification, and you either approve it or deny it, or you decide that it is not a modification, and you abstain because you will not vote on it. There's 4 of us here,
And I don't vote, right?
only to break a tie, isn't it? But that would not be
You
a
got a lot of
problem.
numbers.
So,
Yeah, so.
So-
I will voice my opinion.
So Diane, what's the basis for this, for our position that it is not a modification?
It's not different from what they presented before that we denied.
Can we defer this until we have a chance to look at that?
It's an option.
I humbly ask that you not do that.
Well, I think Diane has real strong feelings, and I appreciate that. I mean, that would be an option, would be to defer it, pull those applications, review them carefully, and see if there really is enough difference or any difference to amount to anything.
This is a change that will last for 100, 150, 200 years.
I agree. I agree.
So, putting it off for a month, I would agree to that.
Possibly, if you do defer it, I would recommend putting it on the applicant that they need to prove that it's a modification, if that's the, but
Ed, how do you feel about that?
I think that's our way to go.
Again, I'll call for
The other way,
motions.
we're gonna get. Yeah.
I'll call for motions on any or all of those.
Oh, don't ask me to make a motion, because you know what I'm gonna say. So, you all make the motion.
We're gonna defer, right?
Yeah, I move we defer.
So we have a motion to defer.
And place what? As Zach said, what did you say? Place the onus on them to prove that it is a modification?
I mean, unless, you have to have a reason for the deferral, so.
Okay.
That
The applicant will
Shall provide, what was the modification from the previous rule?
My take on this is, just as I've read, I don't think, we don't specify in the ordinance what constitutes a modification. Therefore, I don't think that even if they do provide documentation or they can't provide documentation, I think per the ordinance as I'm reading it, it would be able to be a modification and come to the board for an approval.
Even if it was exactly the same?
It says,
You have to look at the definition of modification in the dictionary.
so this is, yeah, but you really have to look at it in modification within our ordinance.
Unless if it's defined in the ordinance, yes, but if it is not defined in the ordinance, you don't get to decide what it means, you go to the dictionary.
So would that mean then, Zach, that if somebody came and said we want to take the 2 windows on our front porch out and cover them over, and they just kept coming back every month with the same application, and they wanted to pay the fee, they could kind of just do it again?
That's on them to pay the fee, yeah, they're paying a fee, it's not anymore.
That does not make us regulatory,
That-
does it? That can't be right.
Okay, I have been doing this for a while with modification. It is a change, it is a modification. Any way you look at it, that's the definition. If we don't have that definition in there, that will be the definition. If this is the same exact, for this application, I can say you all have worked very well on it, we even had a special meeting. But a modification is something has changed. What they are saying, you do understand what they're saying, is that this, what you're proposing now was already in the original application that was denied.
I believe it's quite
So
different
their
than what the
question
original.
is, well, their question is it, and is it different? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And Diane is saying it's not different than the original application, so they want to defer it to see, to have both
Give
applications.
him
Well,
an
actually, three
opportunity to show
applications.
us that it is different.
Yes, and for them to, for you or Mr. Mayor to show that it is different. I'm getting all the straightforward motions, so I
still,
can respect it.
I
Is that
call
what
for
you're saying?
motions, and I think that's, yeah. You want to flesh out your motion again? Or you want me to read it back?
I thought you should read it back.
Motion is to defer, allowing the applicant for the next meeting to provide, see, I can't put words in your mouth, Ed. You got to say it. We're hoping, we want to give the applicant the
To
opportunity.
provide confirmation that the application is a modification? No,
It does say clearly described, so clearly describe what the modification is.
okay, good.
Okay, do that.
And that this is not.
All right, so read it back again.
Motion to defer, giving the applicant the opportunity to provide confirmation that this is a modification. But I don't think that's clear.
No,
What did you just
we're
say?
going to use those words because it's in the,
Clearly describe what the modification is
From
from the original.
from our
For the,
Denial.
for the applicant to clearly describe the modification.
no, because they've already described the modification right here. Only they call it modification and I don't. So I would not go there. I would ask them that to show specifically the difference between this and the one we denied.
I agree.
Clearly, one of the differences.
But we're in the middle of the motion, I'm sorry. So, somebody want to go through that one more time so that we can have a real motion? Because right now we just have sort of bits and pieces. I mean, I think you got the need of it, that give the applicant the opportunity to prove that this is a true that this is a modification, not something we don't have to do about.
Excuse me, I can try to get it figured out because I have all the agendas right here, so what I can do. I just need to know which original applications, the first one or from the first meeting or from the special.
Can we go look at
I
both?
think it was the first and the
I was
second,
going to get it.
because I think it stayed in there for both of them.
Why are we looking at it right now?
To make sure that you're not just doing this to make sure that it's an actual modification. That'll save everyone time.
Okay.
You all don't mind,
I'm okay with that. Well, that's true.
and that'll save
Yep.
the technicality appeal, as you said. It'll save everyone time.
May I ask something? I think that, well, maybe it's more of a statement. I think I'm at a disadvantage because I don't actually have Larry Durrett who could clearly speak to that and the difference between what we've submitted in the prior application.
Actually, well, we were all at the meeting, and I can pull up the exact application.
I greatly
But
appreciate
regardless,
that.
if we defer it, then he can be here.
But your purpose in deferring is not just to throw a wrench in this project, but more to clarify whether or not there's a difference, which she can clearly do for us now.
That's,
Thank you.
Are you an architect? Are you a builder?
No, I'm just pulling up the application so you can see, that's all I'm saying, that it's not legally a technicality, and will be. It'll just save time if people look at the application. You can pull it up on your iPad also.
Let me figure out what it is till I'm up there.
I'm just trying to save people time that way.
And this translates to money in our perspective, not so much time.
Yeah, that's what I
Got a
said, bottom
combination.
line, that's what it comes down to, doesn't it?
Not too many people step up to this project. That building itself has looked like,
You did a wonderful thing, appreciate it.
doesn't sound like it.
Are you, Tracy, you're looking to see when as well?
Yes, and then we can pull the original application there. Because I know it's two, if we had a couple meetings.
Yeah, I think it might have been
That's what I was thinking.
June. The first one is in June.
Mm-hmm.
That's why yesterday, in the beginning if you were the right person to sit here and answer the questions.
Have I failed to be able to adequately?
Well, were you here for the other two meetings?
Yes, I was.
Well,
Then,
Except.
what's the difference? What modification you're presenting us here that's different?
You know, I have a hard time remembering my schedule.
Okay, so you
last
can't
week,
answer.
so- Well, what I can clearly say is that our proposal was to have modern materials. And this proposal is keeping the same. That is certainly one big difference there. Our first proposal was modifying it to code standards.
Have a look at the second one too. So we have a special.
So the first one, all of them were gonna be brought out to meet.
All exactly the same.
And with updated materials.
Oh, he was changing
that's where I question what
Now,
you're
just
saying.
look
I
at
don't
it.
remember
Now,
that.
just look at it. They were all the same.
I don't know if I can get you there.
I don't either.
The first one, show.
So this was the proposal that was first brought in June. All of them would be the same.
Well, where does it show that this is different from the original?
This is
I
split.
apologize, this
It's
is.
original. There's the
That is
existing.
original.
So you see how these are split?
Uh-huh.
We want to make them square.
It's a big deal.
They're all identical.
But the second time, I think he agreed.
Yeah, so just call that, when you call that one out.
Will you call out the material proposed for that change as well? That modification of the storefronts?
Using the original material. Oh,
That's what we proposed in that application?
I don't know about that.
Okay, I would think that would be relevant.
This is the one, in the fire extinguisher, 3,000
Mhm.
applications.
And 110 degrees. Yeah.
I think this is the last. It's 300 pages.
Yeah, I remember.
So you have a regular meeting, I'll have a special meeting.
The special meeting is, I think, where the last time we heard this, I think. Yeah, I think it was, well, the third meeting was where it was approved, and there weren't any changes to this.
There weren't any changes to,
No, there was a storefront statement.
the same as they're requested today, or
No, the
they
original.
had before. Regardless, think about this for a minute. What we denied was changing the storefronts, right? That's what we denied. So
With new material,
we denied changing the storefront at all,
with new material, we proposed up to code materials.
regardless. We denied the storefront change. They're still coming back with a storefront change. We've already denied that. So just because they're asking for a little bit of a change, which is like a little angle in a straight one, which they probably don't even realize they're doing, it shouldn't make any difference.
Well, it's, your justification for it is because you don't want the storefront to change. But
That's right.
they're trying to say, okay, well, what about if we do this? If that's,
But that's
Indeed, the
their
situation.
application.
yeah, that's their.
So you're saying if somebody wants to come in here and make a slight change every single time, the same thing as with the 2 windows in the front?
They have a legal
Yes,
obligation to be
obligation
allowed to
process.
make a change to
That's
their
why we're
house, or to
looking-
try to make a change
Yes.
to their
The
house.
second application was to leave the storefronts as they are, except the materials will be changed to what their storefront to
Okay.
be. And,
Did it actually say leave them as they are or whatever?
well, the drawing showed no change in their
Okay.
format.
All right, so
It's
then
just
they're
the
not,
materials.
the only modification they're asking for tonight is the materials, they're not really asking for that. They're
No,
saying, hey, the
no,
storefront.
they are asking to change the footprint of the storefront. So it is, in my view, it is a modification, a true modification, because they're changing the storefront. They were changing the footprint of the storefront. Before, they only asked to change the material.
So you're saying at the firehouse, they were going to leave them as they currently are? Then this modification is to
No.
make a major change?
No, I'm talking about their application.
That's what I'm
Their second application,
at the
when
firehouse.
when we were at the firehouse, was to leave the footprint of the storefronts the same,
Uh-huh,
but change the materials.
okay.
So they wanted to put in a modern storefront, but leave the footprint the same. So now their proposal is to keep the original material, but change the footprint of the storefront.
So that is a modification, so you need to vote as.
That's what I'm saying. The technicality, if you could overturn our decision on what you're saying on the slightest technicality here. It could be that they change the dimension by half an inch. It's a modification, it's different.
It was our hopes that we could bring something back to this board, that this board could accept, and we meet y'all halfway, keeping materials that are more expensive, less functional, not safe to the public, but actually bring these storefronts where the usable space is more usable than what that is.
So do we have a motion? You can still, if you feel that, you can still make that motion, and the board can vote on it.
I made the suggestion at the beginning that we don't even consider this. I still feel that way, so I don't want to make another motion.
But you want to make that as a motion?
I would make that as a motion, but it's going to be voted down because it already has been.
I don't feel like it's a valid motion because you've already deemed it as a modification.
As a modification.
Do we have another motion? Do we have a motion? Somebody's got to make a motion.
Ed, this is up to you.
You can defer.
You did the pre-app, you talked to the man.
Yes. But I believe you indicated previously that it was not appropriate for a motion to include my alternate modification I did. So that leaves us with either approving the modification as proposed by the applicant or denying the
Or
modification or deferring.
And you have to have reason
What
to
would be the
defer.
basis for deferring?
Let's say we don't come up with a motion, then what happens?
Tracy, what happens if we don't?
I don't know. I mean,
I think we owe it. I think we owe it to have a motion.
Yeah.
I think we do. Because it doesn't make any difference. If we don't have a motion, my guess is it can still be appealed.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I think so.
So I don't think we're accomplishing, I think we stick to our guns and we do what we think, what the guidelines say. And if somebody chooses to overturn that, that's out of our power.
Well, on that basis, then the motion is to deny, as I see it.
Because,
Deny this modification.
motion to deny because,
was,
You have it right on your,
well,
yep.
yeah. Guidelines, page 47. Cape Charles Guidelines, page 47, storefronts. Item 1, retain all elements, materials, and features that are original to the building. And repair them as necessary.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, all in favor? Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
One abstained, motion carries. So the application.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your patience with us. Okay. Hold on. Okay, do we have any other business? We have a work session coming the day October the 4th, I believe. We discussed in the last work session, each of us were going to take an aspect of the guidelines and work on it. Everybody making some progress on that.
I didn't have much to work on, I didn't have anything.
You did? Would you like something?
No. I'm doing my own little thing, I'm looking at something.
Okay, that's
I've taken it on myself to note every time new construction is mentioned in our guidelines,
Okay.
so that we can look at every single time it's mentioned.
Ed, you're working on the siding or the foundation and I'm making this.
And Zach, what are you doing?
Zoning ordinance, 60 days.
Okay, any other business? Any announcements? Anybody going on vacation? In Hawaii,
Wouldn't that be nice?
Honolulu, Puerto Rico, New Zealand?
All of
Would
you
you like
know,
to go on, Chris? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'm going
I'll second the motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.